Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, we're just doing a quick Q&A and we'll be back to regular programming next week. I've got Chris Hose from Chartwell Nurseries who I'm chatting to tomorrow. So pretty excited to have that chat with Chris. But the first question, I've got 7 or 8 questions in here, but the first one is not a question, but it comes from Yards Landscape saying, no question, but glad you're continuing with the podcast. And there is part of it, obviously, that I do, but the most gratitude should go to the guests that take the time, that agree to come on and take the time to come on, because that's the most difficult part of doing the podcast is getting people to come on and organising time. So if you enjoy the podcast, you should be appreciative of the guests that come on, because otherwise it'd just be me rambling on doing Q&As every week, which will get pretty boring pretty quickly. So yeah, very, very grateful for the people who come on the podcast as a guest and share their stories. Rich Earth Landscape said, what trends are you seeing start to fade? I was listening to the Landscaping podcast, the Landscape Victoria podcast, sorry, the Front Garden, last week or the week before, with Paul Pritchard on there, and he was talking to Chris Weiss, and they were having a laugh at how people used to use bluestone around pools. And I was, at the time I was listening to it, I was laying bluestone around a pool. So I assume that might be a trend that is fading because they get a bit hot. But yeah, I'm not sure they get that hot. But I also haven't been around a pool in the sun with bare feet. So we have been doing a lot more limestone around pools. So perhaps bluestone around pools is being a bit phased out, but it certainly looks pretty good. And when you think of how often you use the pool compared to looking at it, you're going to be looking at it a lot more. So I don't know. I still think it's got a place in there. Other than that, if you're looking at a lot of the things I do, they're generally trends that are starting to fade because it takes me a long time to catch up to things and start to jump on with trends. And then by the time I get onto them, no one else is doing them anymore, or they're starting to fade. So if you follow along with some of the work I'm doing, you'll often see some of the trends that are starting to fade, but not the place to be to catch on with the new trends. And that's why I like looking at Instagram Reels as well, because they're usually TikToks from 2 months ago. Abcam Horticulture said, has hosting the podcast helped you become a better businessman and leader? I don't think it has at all to either of them. What it has done is made me more aware of deficiencies and things I could do better. And there's another question later which will relate to it a little bit as well. But I haven't really. I don't think there's anything that I've changed from talking to anyone on the podcast, whether that's because I'm stupid or stubborn, who knows? But yeah, there's things I'd like to have done, but it's quite often you can get caught up in the day-to-day running of the business and just trying to get things done and having to tick things off so you can send an invoice and just chasing your tail a lot. So you're not able to stop and work on the business because you're working in the business, that old cliche. And I think when times are tougher, which they are at the moment, they have been for, it could be 18 months or so, it's a lot harder to make those changes and be more focused on the business. So, yeah, so it's not something I've been doing at the moment. So, yeah, because I suppose the podcast has been going for 3 years, I think. So a lot of those times I've been struggling and just sort of burning the candle at both ends. So it'd be good to be able to get on top of things and then take a breath. But I don't seem to like having free time. So I do work, I do the podcast, and then doing the landscaping school as well. So it's yeah, it's funny the amount of things that I do, considering how much I like doing nothing, because I love doing nothing. But then I come up with all these different ideas to keep me from doing nothing. So it's a bit of a oxymoron. But yeah, I don't think it is. I don't know. There's no examples I could think. No example I could think of that has changed the way that I do things in terms of being a better businessman or leader. But hopefully, other people are taking advice and actually implementing it, and they're becoming better business people or leaders. Peter Donegan, his question is pineapple on pizza. It's a hard yes for me. couldn't love it anymore. And I think Peter is one of those people who he just gets outraged over people putting pineapple on pizza, but has never actually tried it. So his opinion is irrelevant on that subject. TL Landscape Gardening said, "How much a day are you trying to make off staff members dollar wise, roughly?" It's not something I've dialed down all that much. Yeah, because I put everything all sort of into a bucket when I'm working out the hourly rate. So um, yeah, it'd probably be 10 or 15% at a guess on top of that. But again, that's so with the landscaper school that I've got coming out, I'm doing things. It's all landscape construction, but I think it'd be great for there'd be people who could benefit a lot out of a business course. I'll get how to run your business course as part of that as well. But I am so bad at that I'm not going to be not including that in anything that I'm doing because, um, yeah, I don't have the knowledge enough to advise anyone else on how to run a business because I'm not doing it well enough myself. Um, I know Luke Smith from the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. He's got a business course that he's done, and it's targeted more towards lawn maintenance and lawn mowing and maintenance people. But it's pretty similar as well, like working out how to charge hourly rate. So I assume he goes over that in his course as well. So that would be something worth looking into. But what the best, probably one of the best people to talk to would be your accountant. So your accountant who you talk to regularly, and they can talk you through, the real numbers on what you should be charging. Because yeah, it's taken me a long time to realize that probably not charging enough, and then by the time those changes come into effect, you're 6 months down the track, and then things change again. I got my car insurance renewal today, and that's gone up 15% in a year. No claims or anything, just goes up 15%. So everything just is getting a lot more expensive. And sometimes when you're not good at dialing in your quote or knowing how much you should be charging per hour, you can get by because if you where you're not too good at charging the right amount in one area, you could make up for it in another one. But because everything is so expensive these days, any mistake you make, you feel it. So there's a lot less room for error. So that's what I've been finding. So I don't have a set dollar amount or set percentage that are charged on top of it, but something that Luca, I've heard him mention a couple of times, is you need to be charging like a ballpark figure. It's obviously different for people. Like if you've got a shed to rent, or compared to someone who doesn't, or if you've got machines compared to someone who doesn't, you're not going to be charging the same amount. But he said around about 3 times the amount that you pay your employees, what you need to charge them out at per hour. But again, you don't want to run your business based off that, but that's just a bit of a ballpark figure to go off. Edenscapes has said, "At what point did you realize you couldn't run your business out of a ute and trailer?" I still do run my business out of a ute and trailer. We've also got a truck, and the trailer is like a tool trailer. It's not like a 6x4, open top trailer. But you can run your business any way you want. Like it doesn't matter about the stereotypes. Yeah, and like the truck is awesome, but we could get by without the truck as well. You just get a lot more deliveries. But yeah, if you just have got your business with a ute trailer and things are going well, you don't need to change anything. It's only the only time you want to change something is when you need something else, not just changing for the sake of changing. I've spoken to people who don't even like doing paving, so they don't need a mixer or anything for that. So they'll just do garden edging and softscaping, lawn. Yeah. So there's you don't need to do everything that everyone else is doing just because everyone else is doing it. Like if you aren't comfortable doing it or don't enjoy it or aren't set up for it, you can just keep doing what you're doing, and the thing you focus on is making a profit and being good at it, and then dialing that in. So yeah, I've been going for 15 years. It'll be 15 years in a couple of months, and yeah, still got 2 utes, a trailer, and a truck. I've got a shed to store it all and everything. So it's if the cliche of a ute and trailer means it's sort of parked in your garage or on your front yard, we are a lot more invested in the business than that. But that will just be whenever you realize, whenever that works for you. So some people could start out straight away, like needing a bigger space. Some people may never. There's still some people who work from their own property, because some people have got like rear lane access or a nice big double garage at the back that's not part of the house garage. So yeah, just like charging an hourly rate, everything is different for every person. So it's whatever works for you is the best way to think of things. And if it's time to get a shed, then so be it. Start looking for that. But you'd also want to work out how much that's going to impact how much you need to charge per hour, in your pricing. Because I think it's about 30 grand a year that I spend on our shed and the outgoings. Might be 32 or 33, but it's around about that. So that's basically, what is that, about $600 a week that I've got to recoup from the jobs we're doing. Whereas someone who's just working out of their shed, their own, like as part of their house, doesn't need to charge that amount. So that's why people charge different amounts. Not because one doesn't know what they need to charge, but they could just have less overheads. Varaya Gardening said, have you built or been part of building a garden that has a sound system running through it? I have done both, because we have built one and we are also in the process of building one at the moment, but I haven't had anything to do with both of those sound systems. The electricians on the projects have done them. But it was when I was talking with Sean Dowling from Bowen Gardens. He didn't have many positive things to say about sound systems in gardens, because he said that the sound systems are they improve very quickly. So by the time you put it in, it's outdated and they're improving all the time. But yeah, it's something I would have liked to have done at my own place. Yeah, it's a nice thing just to be able to, when you're outside, just to turn the music on and you've got some speakers in the gardens. But I think for what they cost, they're probably not worth it unless you're going to be entertaining multiple times a year or out in the garden a lot. And not something that we do a lot. Like, it's only been 2 jobs, I think, maybe 3 that we've had them on. And last question's from Piers Cope Williams, and it's a great one to finish with. If you were starting a business now with everything that you know, what would you do differently? As I was wrote down the question and started thinking about it, I was thinking, I wonder if I would start a business if I knew everything I knew now, or just work for someone else. But then I think it's just a grass is greener on the other side kind of thing, where, because if you just work for someone else, you might think, if I could make so much more money working for myself, that I'll go and do that. But yeah, it's one of those sliding door moments where it's impossible to know what it would have been like if I had not run the business and worked for someone else. Because there's definitely people who work for someone else who would make more money than me, but there's also a lot more freedom that I've got, being able to do the jobs I want, generally work when I want. It's funny that people say they start their own business so they can work their own hours, but there are times where you don't get to choose those hours. But more often than not, I find you get to choose a lot of your hours that you do get to work, and it might not be taking 3 weeks off in the middle of summer, but it might just be half a day here or half a day there, or a couple of days, and it's not going to be like that right at the start. And if you've got an apprentice only, it might not be like that for a while as well. But then when you get people who you're able to leave and you can trust to do the jobs, then that's when you can do that. I reckon I reckon listening to a lot of the podcasts and listening to people who are like a lot of successful people and finding out certain key elements that they've done, that they recommend, that are key elements that they've done to build their business, if that's what we wanted to do, would be a good thing to do as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I listen to all these people as well, but don't necessarily implement the advice that they give. So, and whether that's because of my stubbornness or whether that's because it's hard to do when you've got a business already rolling down the hill, or whether that's just hard to do when things are so flat out you can't actually focus on the business because you're working in it. Like another cliche. But yeah, implementing those things like systems and processes would be good. it drives me nuts the amount of times I have to tell multiple people the exact same thing. And it's also better for the employees if I've got more of a a schedule of what we're going to do. Schedules are hard to do because things change so much, but yeah, the times that I do a schedule, and then when it works, it's always been a pretty eye-opening thing, and I love it. So it's probably something I should start trying more often. So I think it's just what I would do differently would be to try and run a business rather than just be a landscaper. So I reckon that's all, because most people when they start, they work as a landscaper, then they just start working as a landscaper for themselves. They're not actually running a business. So just have a different mindset about it and run a business. So focus on the profitability, focus on systems and procedures and processes, knowing how much you need to be charging and where all your costs are coming from, having separate bank accounts to put PAYG in and your BAS in, and just doing all those things so that you don't get yourself caught out. But so it could have been even worth getting a business coach, because there's so many different, like when I say listen to all these people on the episodes, like there's 200 episodes, so there's 150 people to listen to. So the amount of time the amount of the information in that is just overwhelming. So it's too much to, like, if you were going to start a business, to go and listen to all the information that's out there, there's too much to take on. So it might be a good idea getting a business coach early who can sort of guide you. How do you find the right business coaches is another question, because not all business coaches are going to be the best ones for starting a business. So I reckon that if I was going to start it differently, that would be a good thing to do, but I would probably make a lot of mistakes as well as what everyone will. But yeah, finding a mentor would also be good. So maybe not so much a business coach, but a mentor who has made a lot of the mistakes, so can sort of steer you in the right direction and give you some guidance about better ways to do things than what they did. Because the best way to learn is by making mistakes, and the better way than the best is to learn from other people's mistakes, because they don't cost as much. So yeah, there's been a lot of things I would do differently, but I've certainly got no regrets about anything, but would rather would would rather have done things a bit differently. So probably do have regrets in that case. But yeah, hopefully the tide is starting to turn. And then once we get on top of things, then we'll be able to start making some changes and then exponentially improving the way things are going as well. So thank you very much to everyone again who put in a question. I have enjoyed doing this again. But yeah, back to normal programming next week. And we'll see you next week.